Okay, so I think a lot of you are getting progressive overload wrong. The reason being is I've seen a lot of posts, a lot of videos lately, just talking about the topic progressive overload, and I think you're looking at more at things that facilitate progressive overload, but only if they're applied correctly. So I want to talk about that today, primarily because I ran across the guy's channel, and this is kind of a response slash critique to his videos on progressive overload, but it's also, I want to openly say at the start, I really appreciate your videos, man. I think you do a great job, and I think you're a gem for the natural hypertrophy training community, if you will. But that's Basement Bodybuilding. I've really enjoyed his content, but I wanted to bring some context to something he said and kind of explain why I think you're missing the mark here, man, a little bit. Talk about some of the good things you said and then also some of the bad. The other thing is, within the past 24 hours, another guy who's huge on YouTube, Gregg Doucette, he talked about how progressive overload is stealing your gains, of course, because almost everything out there that we think is a training principle or a good exercise or whatever, and it's worked for a lot of people, it must be stealing your gains. The funny thing about his video, and I'm going to start with him because I want to just lay his to bed really quickly, is he describes how progressive overload's stealing your gains, and then he talks about his train harder method, and his train harder method actually perfectly describes what progressive overload is when it's applied correctly. I'm going to give a definition at the end of this video about what it is, and then also some practical applications, so please stick around for that, or maybe go to the end if you want to not listen to the critique of Basement Bodybuilding. But with that said, let's get into it. So the first thing you do is you say, what causes progressive overload? And this question being posed in your video for your progressive overload anxiety video shows me that you don't actually understand progressive overload. And I think I shouldn't say you don't understand it. I think but you don't understand what the term actually is. Like you understand how to apply progressive overload from what it seems, but you don't necessarily understand what the term actually is, because you're straw manning it into basically making it out to be progress. So, one thing you say after that is it's bad to value adding reps and weight over a proper foundation. And to an extent, I agree there, but I would say that a properly designed training cycle is going to allow you to add reps and weight across that cycle. And generally, if you can't, you probably did something wrong. And I'm not saying that's the only way you can apply progressive overload, but it is a very easy and practical way to do it. And if you're setting your foundation well and you're running the plan appropriately, you almost definitely should be able to pull this off. Okay, so 3 things you touch on in your video that I really appreciate. Avoid tracking hypertrophy lifts. You say that's a big no-no. Yes, of course, it's a no-no. If you're not able to track your lifts, you're not able to determine, did I give myself an appropriate dose week to week, so that I'm challenging the body slightly more every week across my training phase. The next point you make is biasing the big 3. For hypertrophy, biasing the big 3 is probably a bad idea. Focusing on them just because you can throw around heavy weight is probably not the best route. Really, what you're looking to do is stress out the muscles and setting up an environment where your body wants to make those muscles bigger. Just lifting more weight or the heaviest weight possible, that's a good way to stimulate your nervous system and build general overall strength, but it's not necessarily the best way to grow. Then finally, better technique versus loads and reps. The thing I think that misses a mark with this better technique piece is, I would say across the training phase, what you're actually looking for is, yes, across the life cycle of a lifter, we want better technique. One of the things I preach to my clients is focus, move, now better. So that means before the set, I'm focusing on what I'm trying to achieve with this set. When I'm doing the set, I'm moving and I'm going through it. And then finally, now better is after the set, what did I learn from that set that I can bring into my future sets? So the lifter's journey is one of improving week to week on technique, on effort, on being able to be more dialed in with a training phase, with intent, all of those things. But if my technique actually gets way better from a hypertrophy standpoint week to week, it's going to be a lot harder to track if I progress throughout the mesocycle. So I would much rather someone have consistent technique in the framework of a mesocycle, and then maybe retool that technique down the road and make it something that your body's more sensitive to. Okay. Then your best point, man, one of the best points that is made is this idea of artificial progress, which is basically just changing your technique in the context of a cycle just to add weight or reps to the bar. That's a big no-no, because then we don't know if we're actually improving. We don't know if we're still adapting to a movement, if our body's still like taking that exercise and wanting to adapt to it, or if it's become stale. So to change your technique just for the sake of improving performance, that's a big no-no in the context of running a training cycle. Technique should be consistent. Okay, so with that said, what actually is progressive overload? Progressive overload is a gradual increase in the stimulus throughout the course of a mesocycle from week to week. So workout number 1, week 1, to workout number 1, week 2, I should be making it more difficult to perform than it was week 1. Which, the way I want to describe this is, and the way I like to describe it to a lot of people is, if I'm thinking of a singular set, so let's say I'm taking barbell curls for a set of 10 reps with 95 pounds in week 1. And let's say to hit those 10 reps, it was 2 hard repetitions. I got to the point in the set where like the last 2 reps were hard. The first 8 leading up to it weren't. Okay, the next week, I could add 5 pounds to that bar. And let's say I do 10 reps and it's still only 2 of them are hard. That's not progressive overload. The stimulus was the same. I still only did 2 repetitions that were hard for my biceps because they're better this week. So what I'd actually need to do is I added those 5 pounds, but I need to make sure that those 5 pounds give me 3 hard reps in that set. If they don't, I do 11 reps. Then I got the 3 hard reps. So you see where I'm going with that. So that's how you actually increase the stimulus from week to week. And like I said, it should be viewed in the context of a mesocycle. Now, so with that being said, what are some good bumpers? Some good bumpers are, if I can't get better for more than 3 weeks in a row, to the point where my performance is improving, kind of like how I described with the barbell curl, for instance, if I can't continue to do that in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't need to be with reps or weight. It can be with sets. It can be with intensity techniques, drop sets, things like that. But if I can't do it for longer than 3 weeks, I probably started way too close to the fire, and I was going harder than I needed to actually in those first few weeks to make them productive. So what I like to say is it should take at least longer than 3 weeks to hit a wall, but it probably shouldn't take much longer than 8 weeks in most contexts. Maybe if you're a rank beginner, or if you're someone coming back from injury, you might want to think of a training cycle running longer than 8 weeks being an okay thing, because you want to start kind of far away from that fire, because you're actually trying to let your connective tissue, your movement quality, all those things kind of catch up, so that then you can actually challenge the systems you're trying to challenge. Okay? So, with that being said, I'll kind of leave it there. The one last thing that I want to leave you guys with is the main reason this stuff is needed is because of the yin and yang of fitness principles, which are directed adaptation and adaptive resistance. I'll be touching on those within the next few weeks. Like I said, I call them the yin and yang. I'll probably throw a video out here that just explains them a little bit more. But you can look at it like this. As I get better, what I did the week before, if I did the exact same thing, it's not as potent of a dose or a stimulus for me as it used to be. So I need to make that a more difficult stimulus. That's where progressive overload comes in. So what I'm saying is, Basement Bodybuilding, love your content. I'd love to see your comment down below is just like a response of what you think about this. But the things that you're describing as progressive overload, they aren't actually progressive overload. They're means by which you achieve progressive overload. And I hope I made that clear in this video. Guys, like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and I really think I do have some things to offer to the YouTube fitness community, and I'll be trying to post more regularly over the course of the next few months. Thanks, and have a great night.